And welcome to In Depth. This is Book TV's monthly author call-in program where we feature one author and his or her body of work. This month, we're pleased to feature professor and author Eric Posner. He's a law professor at the University of Chicago, and in fact, we are in Chicago at the Chicago Tribune's Printers Row Lit Fest, and we also are joined by a studio audience as well who will also have questions for Professor Posner. Professor Posner, if we could, start by giving us a snapshot of what you do and what you write about.
I'm a professor of law at the University of Chicago. I've been there for about 15 years. I write about a number of different topics, constitutional law, and particularly the powers of the presidency, international law, and other legal fields, contract law and banking law, and a few others as well.
You're a graduate of Harvard Law School.
That's right.
And you are the Kirkland and Ellis Professor at the University of Chicago. What does that mean?
It just is a title that's given to professors after they've reached a certain level of they're old enough to deserve a title and they get one. So it doesn't mean anything beyond that.
Now let's establish your pedigree right off the bat. You are Judge Richard Posner's son. Who is Judge Richard Posner?
He's a judge on the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. Before he was a judge, he was an academic also at the University of Chicago Law School. And he's well known for a variety of opinions on various things. In the legal world, he's best known for introducing economics to the law.
Well, let's show you Professor Posner's book so you get an idea of what he does write about. In 2000, he published his first book, and that was The Law and Social Norms. He's also written The Perils of Global Legalism. That came out in 2009. Now, Professor Posner has co-authored several books. That includes The Limits of International Law, The New Foundations of Cost-Benefit Analysis, Terror in the Balance, Climate Change Justice, and The Executive Unbound. And I want to start with that one, if we could, Professor Posner, The Executive Unbound. In my reading of that book, is it fair to say that you write that the separation of powers as established in the United States is not working?
That's right. It's not working. It's eroded over the centuries. And the result is that the executive, the president, has become much more powerful than the founders had anticipated when they designed the constitutional system in the 18th century.
Is that a bad thing?
I don't think it's a bad thing, and part of the purpose of the book is to criticize the conventional wisdom. The conventional wisdom is that this is a bad thing. The president has become too powerful, is unaccountable to the people. The view in the book, the view that I assert with my co-author is that the world has changed a great deal in the last 200 years. Congress and the judiciary no longer function as well as the founders anticipated that they would, and there's been a natural devolution of power to the presidency as a result.
Who is your co-author?
Adrian Vermeule. He's a professor at Harvard Law School. He used to be a colleague of mine at the University of Chicago.
So what has been the practical effect of having a more powerful executive?
Well, for example, the Libya intervention is President Obama decided essentially on his own to send U.S. military forces into Libya. Under the Constitution as written, he's supposed to get the authorization of Congress. That did not happen. Obama is not the first person to do this. President Clinton did something similar in 1999 when he sent U.S. forces into Serbia. And other presidents have before. So this is an evolution in presidential power. It's one that Congress has basically acquiesced in.
Now, there was a lot of criticism during the Bush administration about the power of the executive, and Dick Cheney, well-known proponent of executive power. Did the Bush administration push the ball forward when it came to, as you say, unleashing or unbinding the executive?
It did, but not as much as people generally believe it did. One of Cheney's ideas was that the presidency was actually much powerful up to the Nixon administration, and then there was this backlash as a result of Watergate. And Cheney's view was that for the country to be secure and to function well, the presidency had to be as powerful as it was up until Nixon. And so he and others in the administration, in an unusually self-conscious way, sought to reassert these powers. But much of what the Bush administration did, perhaps almost all of what it did, fell comfortably within precedents of previous presidents. And the same thing with Obama. Presidents do have a tremendous amount of power, and the Bush administration took advantage of existing understandings, traditions, and precedents.
Well, another thing you write about quite a bit is international law. Now, we've gotten this email in for you, and this is from Christopher Wenk of Alexandria, Virginia. And Mr. Wenk writes in, do you believe that the Obama administration has mostly continued or departed from the Bush administration's legal framework in the fight against terrorism?
Mostly continued it. There have been some significant breaks. But on examination, they seem less significant than they might appear. So the Obama administration repudiated torture, of course, but the Bush administration had also more or less given up on coercive interrogation or torture by 2007. The Obama administration wanted to try more people, but it's had to give up on that idea. But in other respects, the Obama administration has continued Bush administration policies. Warrantless surveillance is an example. The use of drones to assassinate people who are considered threats to U.S. security, including American citizens. The assertion of strong secrecy privileges, which has made it difficult, if not impossible, for people harmed by counterterror operations to bring lawsuits. In these and other ways, and really, detention of people without trial is something that was greatly criticized during the Bush administration, but the Obama administration has continued with that as well.
Professor Posner, in the executive Unbound, you used the term tyrannophobia. What is that?
Oh, tyrannophobia is the combination of tyrant and phobia, and it's the unreasoning fear of an excessively powerful executive. And this country has a long tradition of tyrannophobia, and at the beginning it was quite justified because when the country was founded, it was the only large republic or quasi-democracy at the time. Most countries were kingdoms, and the founders, who were well read in the classics and in European history as well, feared that the U.S. would follow the precedents of other republics and degenerate into a monarchy and then into a tyranny. So they were very worried about this, and the constitutional design can be explained in large part by their efforts to prevent that from taking place. What has happened, though, over the last few hundred years is that most countries in the world have become democracies. Various institutions that were unknown in the 18th century, including the party system and the kind of modern, robust freedom of the press, have arisen, which I think have greatly reduced the fear reduced the risk that a powerful executive would engage in abuses of power.
Two of your books that you've written with Professor Vermeule, The Executive Unbound and Terror in the Balance. Were these written for law students, or are these written for the lay public?
They were intended for both groups, scholars and the public, but they do assume a certain amount of knowledge about the history of the presidency and constitutional law, so certain segments of the public.
In Terror in the Balance, this is a quote from Terror in the Balance. If the case for coercive interrogation during normal times is weak because the moral harms outweigh the benefits, the case dramatically strengthens during emergencies. During emergencies, the moral harms from coercive interrogation remain constant while the potential benefits rise. This is a simple application of the trade-off thesis. What does that mean?
Well, so this goes back to the Bush administration era debates about coercive interrogation. And the view that we advance in the book is essentially a utilitarian one. So any policy that the government might pursue is justified if the benefits are greater than the costs, if it helps people more than hurts them. And so this is something that everybody is familiar with prisons. They cause harm to people, but they're justified because they reduce crime. The same idea applies to coercive interrogation. Now,